Big 12 country, what is going on? This is Couz. Welcome into this live edition of Couz's Corner here on this Sunday, the Sunday following week 2 of the college football season. I finished watching my Buffalo Bills defeat the Arizona Cardinals. I had some time on my hands, so I said, you know what? I'm going to get on here and talk to the fine people in Big 12 country, and we're going to talk about what teams did in week 1 and week 2, and I'm going to update my Big 12 tier rankings that I did in the preseason. So thank you for joining the show. For those of you who are in already, thank you to Sergeant Pickles for being the first comment I see on my page. He says, the irony that 3 of the Pac teams are top half of the conference and Colorado isn't one of them. Yes, sir, Sergeant Pickles, you are correct. That is irony for sure. But before we get into the show, I want to give a shout out to my sponsor right here on the channel, Couz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner, your personal injury and medical malpractice attorneys. They help me keep the lights on and help me continue to do what I do here on the channel. So I want to give them a shout out, and let's do that right now. Since 1931, the attorneys at Couz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Couz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. Thank you for your patience and letting me get through that 40-second shout out to my awesome channel sponsor. And I ask that you please, if you need an attorney for medical malpractice or car accident injuries, whether it be you or a family member, please give them a call if you're in West Virginia or Virginia. Now, let's dig into the show here. Let's take a look. Let me see if any more people have popped in. If you're watching this on X, by the way, first off, thank you. Second of all, I ask that you please go over to my YouTube channel once this show is done. Go check out my previous videos over there, my previous live streams. And if you haven't yet, please hit the subscribe button and help me get to my magic number of 10,000 subscribers. Also, please like this video if you think I earn it. If you're watching on your Apple device or any device and you don't see the like button, hit the X, close out of the group chat. You see the thumbs up button, hit it, and then you can open the group chat right back up, and you can hang out in the chat with people like Mad Dog Sport, Joaquin Morales, Joaquin, sorry, I hope I got your name right, Tyler Nelson, Sergeant Pickles, PA Mountaineer, and others. Pokemon Kid Entertainment, who's a VIP channel member here. Thank you, Pokemon Kid Entertainment. I am doing well today. I'm having a good day. My Buffalo Bills won today, so I'm happy. And the Mountaineers won last night, so I've had a good weekend so far. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at these Big 12 tier rankings real quick. First off, I'm going to pull up the ones I already created. These are the Big 12 tier rankings I made in the preseason. I have Colorado as I had Utah as the only top shelf team in the Big 12. I had Iowa State, Kansas State. I know Kansas State's hard to see because they're purple, but I had Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and TCU as my contenders. I thought all of them would probably finish around the 7-2 mark in league play. Had Colorado penciled in at 8-1 in league play. My in the conversation tier, I had West Virginia, Kansas, and Arizona. The pretender tier, I had UCF, Cincinnati, and Baylor. Now, I mistakenly put Texas Tech in the bottom shelf tier. I actually intended for them to be in the pretender tier, so I'm going to go ahead and make that correction now. But so I had Texas Tech as a pretender. Colorado was really the only team I had in bottom shelf. And then I had in the well, which I thought would be the worst teams in the league, I had BYU, Houston, and Arizona State. And boy, oh boy, are one of them going to move up. Maybe even all three. Who knows? We'll see. Also a surprise team in Texas Tech. Texas Tech, when I accidentally put them in the bottom shelf tier, boy, I got some hate from – I don't want to say hate. I got some crap, I upset some Texas Tech fans. Let's just put it that way. And because they said, man, we're going to be better. And they gave me all the reasons why. Well, I'm here to tell you, Texas Tech fans, so far, I probably should have left you in bottom shelf or maybe even put you in the well. But let's go ahead and update these tiers. So first thing I have to do here, and this might take a second, but I'm going to remove the teams from every one of these tiers here. Clear images. Clear images. Again, I'm doing this in real time, so you guys are seeing this live and in color here. But I wanted to do this in real time. I just think it's more interesting to do it that way. I've seen shows that do it both ways, and I enjoy watching the creator think. I enjoy watching the creator maybe change their mind midstream, you know? So I thought, hey, let's do it that way. All right. Let's start off with, I'm just going to go in order here, the TCU Horned Frogs. Where would I put the TCU Horned Frogs? Well, so far, TCU on the year is 2-0. They have defeated Long Island University, an FCS team, 45-0 in week 2. In week 1, they had a Power 4 win over Stanford on the road, defeated Stanford 34-27. Pretty decent win. Now, we know Stanford's not a juggernaut, but they are a Power 4 team. It was on the road halfway across the country. You got to give them a little bit of credit for that. So I'm going, I had TCU in top shelf. Their offense so far has been playing really well. They're putting up a lot of yards, a lot of points. So I'm going to keep TCU in the top shelf tier where I had them in the beginning. So now let's go to Iowa State. Iowa State is sitting 2-0 on the year as well. Huge win yesterday over their in-state rival Iowa on a walk-off field goal. Now, if you like offense, that wasn't the game for you. And to be quite honest with you, if you like offense, Iowa State so far is not the team for you. They are struggling to score points. They were 2019 over Iowa. And then in their in week 1, they defeated North Dakota 21-3. Now they won the game and they only gave up 3 points. They've only given up 22 points in 2 games. But they've also only scored 41 points in 2 games. So their offense has been struggling. They're struggling to run the football. They have yet to eclipse 90 yards in a game, even against North Dakota. So they're struggling on offense. They are 2-0, though. So do I keep them in the top shelf tier? I'm going to say no. I'm going to drop them down 1 tier and put them as in the conversation. We all know Iowa State has a tendency to start off a little bit slow. We all know Matt Campbell will coach his best football probably around the middle to latter part of the season. And that defense is going to show up for Iowa State. We know they're going to play good defense, and defense does travel, and it will always keep you in the conversation. So I'm taking them off the top shelf tier, putting them down in the conversation tier. Next team, the Kansas State Wildcats, another team who's 2-0 on the year. Now, they struggled. They squeaked by Tulane yesterday. But I think Tulane's a good football team. I know they're not a Power 4 team, but they're well coached with John Sumrall now. They seem to be picking up where they left off, even though they lost Fritz, their coach, to Houston, Willie Fritz. But, man, I think Tulane's pretty good. But wasn't super impressed with Kansas State. So far, Avery Johnson hasn't proven to me that he can throw the football down the field. He's very talented. He's very athletic. He can run. And I do think he's going to be a great quarterback, but he's still only a true sophomore. He still only has 3 games of starting experience. The Kansas State defense is playing fairly well. They beat Tennessee Martin in week 2, 41-6. But again, they did give up 27 to Tulane. But man, Chris Klieman is just such a good coach. I'm going to keep Kansas State right now in the top shelf tier. Again, I know the screen's black and it might be hard for you all to see that, but right now TCU, Kansas State are in the top shelf tier. Let me see, make sure I'm not missing any comments that I need to see here. Daniel Gigax, I actually disagree. I'm bringing them down a notch because, winning it on the road at Iowa is tough. I will give them that, but their offense to me just is not doing enough for me to keep them there. All right. Let me see. All right, let's move on. Oklahoma State is next on the list. Oklahoma State. Tough non-conference win against Arkansas yesterday in overtime. I was not super impressed with how Oklahoma State played in that game. They had a lot of major penalties at terrible times that took points off the board potentially, knocked them out of field goal range, or at least forced them to have to kick a field goal instead of scoring a touchdown. I've seen West Virginia do that at times in the past. I know how infuriating that can be for fans. They struggled to run the football against Arkansas. But at the end of the day, they won the game. They did what they needed to do to beat Arkansas, who I think is a pretty decent football team. Now, Arkansas gave that game away, in my opinion, because they turned the ball over 3 times. But you've got it's a Power 4 win over what an SEC team who I thought, other than their turnovers, were a good team. Oklahoma State threw the football fairly well, better than I thought they would, in order to get that win. And with Arkansas shutting down the run game, they said, okay, we're going to beat you through the air. They were able to do that. It took them to overtime to do it, but they did do it. So I was impressed with that. It was at home. So maybe that, maybe I'm being a little hard on, as I talk through this, maybe I'm being a little hard on Iowa State. But when you look at Oklahoma State's first win of the year, it was over South Dakota State, who's a really good FCS program, and they dominated the game 44-20. So I'm going to put Oklahoma State as a top shelf tier team still. I still think they deserve to be there. Am I being too hard on Iowa State here? I don't know. I don't think so. I'm leaving them as in the conversation because their offense, to me, is not getting it done. They're going to have to score more points and run the football better in order to compete in the Big 12. Okay, let's go to Utah. Utah's 2-0. Everybody's darling to win the conference, including me. I've predicted them to go 11-1 on the season, 8-1 in Big 12 play. They're 2-0. They had a victory yesterday over Baylor in what was considered a non-conference game, and a 49-0 win over Southern Utah in week 1, where they looked extremely impressive. Now, Cam Rising did get hurt in the game and left the game yesterday against Baylor. When he left the game, I think they were up 23-0. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. And they didn't score again when he went out. But from all indications are that it's not a serious injury and he should be back. That's what I'm reading online. So I still think Utah, as long as Cam Rising is in the game and can play, they're still I've got these backwards, don't I? I've got the contender and top shelf tiers backwards. Let me fix this real quick, guys. I don't know how this happened. Let's see. Let me move this up one. There we go. TCU is a contender. Utah's top shelf. All right, so let me make the correction here. Top shelf is Utah. Contender tier so far is TCU, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State. And I have Iowa State in the conversation. All right. Sorry about that. Next on the list is Kansas. Now, where do I have Kansas? Kansas Jayhawks are 1-1 on the season. A disappointing loss against Illinois in week 2, 23-17. Jalen Daniels threw 3 interceptions in that game. In week 1, they defeated Lindenwood, an FCS school, 48-3 in dominant fashion. People online are kind of panicking, saying Kansas may not be as good as we thought. Maybe losing Kotelnicki and Jason Bean are going to hurt them, and I think it could, especially Kotelnicki. And Jalen Daniels' turnovers are concerning, but their defense still looks pretty good. They only allowed 23 points against Illinois. They actually statistically won the game pretty much as far as yards and everything else over Illinois. It was just those 3 turnovers that were the difference. Because of that, and because I don't think Jalen Daniels is going to make a habit of turning the football over, I still think Kansas is a really good team, and I still think they deserve to be in the contender tier. I'm not going to hold those 3 interceptions too much against Daniels because, again, I think it may be an anomaly. Next team on the list, my West Virginia Mountaineers. They're 1-1 on the year. Disappointing loss to Penn State. I didn't expect them to beat Penn State, but they didn't. They lost in very ugly fashion. They didn't look good. They didn't play well. They turned it over 3 times. They were just making boneheaded mistakes, fumbling the football, bad snaps, you name it. Giving up big 3rd down scrambles to Drew Aller. Then they turn around. They defeat an FCS school in Albany. They cover the spread. It was a 34.5 spread. They covered it, winning by 35 points, 49-14. There was a stretch in the second quarter where they looked bad defensively. They gave up some really long pass plays against an FCS team that was concerning. Their pass defense looks like it needs a lot of work. Let's be real here. And West Virginia fans are very concerned going into our big backyard brawl week, our backyard brawl game against Pitt. But, again, they played the best team on their schedule, arguably, and the worst team on their schedule, arguably. in back-to-back weeks. I'm not sure you can take a whole lot from those games because, again, they're kind of the anomalies on the schedule. Now they will start playing teams that are more at their level as far as recruiting, record-wise, resource-wise, and everything from here on out. And that includes Pitt, who's an ACC team. So for that reason, I'm still putting West Virginia where they were, and that is in the conversation. I still think they have a chance to be a really good football team. The schedule's not going to be easy. They have to play Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Iowa State, Arizona, all back-to-back weeks, starting September 21st when they host Kansas in Morgantown. But, again, I still need to see more. There are a lot of questions that still need to be answered, both good and bad. Garrett Green, who had a bad week in week 1, turned around and had a solid week in week 2 and completed 74% of his passes. So if he can continue to do that against Power 4 competition, I think this team can go a long way. And I think they now know where their weaknesses are, and they have a chance to fix them before they play against Pitt and against their conference foes. So I still have West Virginia in the conversation. Next team on the list is Arizona, another one of the former Pac-12 schools coming over to the Big 12. And yes, I know Arizona fans, this is an old logo. I have to take what Tiermaker gives me here, okay? So this is the logo I'm using. I didn't have time to download the new logo. So suck it up, deal with it. All right. I'm Arizona's 2-0 on the year. They won 22-10 over Northern Arizona yesterday. Not an impressive showing, but they did win the football game. They won over New Mexico 61-39 in week 1 in a pretty impressive showing. Tetairoa McMillan was the man of the hour, man of the week, over 300 yards receiving with, I think, like 5 touchdowns or something like that. My problem with Arizona, they've committed 19 penalties in 2 games. They have got to get that cleaned up. I think they have some things on defense they need to address, and they need to do a better job of running the football, in my opinion. If they can clean up the penalties, be more disciplined, run the football a little bit better, I still think they can win a lot of football games, and I'm still putting them in the conversation. I still think they deserve to be in the conversation. All right. Next one is one of my surprise teams. I had them as a pretender on my previous list, or at least that's where I intended to put them. I accidentally put them as bottom shelf. But after watching 2 weeks of play of the Texas Tech Red Raiders, after watching them barely squeak by a win against Abilene Christian, 52-51, and then losing to Washington State, I have got Texas Tech. They're 1-1 on the year, by the way. They lost 37-16 to Washington State. Their defense has given up over 1,000 yards of offense in 2 weeks, and including an FCS opponent. So because of that, even though they won the game, they did it in really ugly fashion and gave up a lot of yards and a lot of points. And if they can't stop Abilene Christian, how in the world are they going to stop teams like Utah and Arizona and TCU, maybe Kansas, maybe even West Virginia, if they get their offense rolling? For that reason, I am taking Texas Tech from the pretender list. And right now, I'm putting them on the well list. I know they won the game against Abilene Christian, and I know their offense is pretty good. But, man, that defense is absolutely atrocious. And if they're going to have to score 50 to win games, I don't think they can do it. And even against Washington State, they were only able to muster 16 points offensively. So their offense didn't look great in that game. So I'm putting them in the well tier. And look, Texas Tech fans, you may hate me, but I'm sorry. To me, Joey McGuire has a lot of work to do. And I think they were overhyped coming into the season a little bit. And right now, man, they look really bad. They look like they could be the worst team in this conference. And that's saying a lot, because we've got a couple teams coming up who could also be in that conversation. Let's talk about UCF. They're the next team here. UCF is 2-0 on the year. They have a 57-3 win over New Hampshire in week 1, and then yesterday, they beat Sam Houston 45-14. So they really haven't played anybody yet, let's be honest. R.J. Harvey, the running back, has exceeded 100 yards in both games, but, man, K.J. Jefferson so far has not looked – he looked okay week 2, didn't look good at all week 1. but they are 2-0, but they haven't played anybody. So I'm going to put them right now. I'm a little concerned about their defense, and I'm concerned about the play of KJ Jefferson, but they are 2-0, so I think they at least deserve to be in the conversation. So that's where I'm putting them, is in the conversation. Now, look, just let you guys know, I cannot see your comments right now. I will get to the comment section after I'm finished and see what you guys had to say. If you want to make sure I can see your comment and it's allowing you to do so, please drop a super chat. You can hit the $ beside the chat box. It'll highlight the comment, so when I go back afterwards, I'll be able to see it. And if you're a VIP member, I'll try to catch your comments as well by looking at the badge beside your name. All right, let's keep going. Cincinnati Bearcats. I had them in, I think, on the well tier coming in. Really disappointing day for them yesterday. They had a 27-6 lead on Pitt at one point in the game yesterday, and they allowed Pitt to come back and win the game. So an ultimate choke job by the Bearcats. Or you could say a great comeback by Pitt, however you want to look at it. But the Bearcats are 1-1 on the year. They beat Towson 38-20 in week 1, but they gave up almost, I think it was over 400 yards of offense in that game. So that don't look good. That doesn't look promising. Their defense has a lot of improvement to make. So because of that, I'm a little bit higher on Cincinnati than I probably was going into the year. So I think I'm going to move them up. They do run the ball pretty well with Kiner, and their quarterback transfer, Brendan Sorsby, looks like he might be pretty good. So I'm going to move them up to the bottom shelf tier. I think they might be a little better than Texas Tech, but I don't think they're going to be in the conversation, and I'm not even sure they're a pretender at this point. All right. I was higher on them. Like I said, I originally, earlier in the preseason, I wasn't high on Cincinnati at all. Then after doing some research and thinking about it, I thought, man, maybe they'll be better than I think. But after what they've done the first 2 weeks, I think they're going to struggle, and I'm not sure they make a bowl game. I think they'll struggle to make a bowl, so I have them as a bottom shelf team. The Baylor Bears. Baylor Bears are 1-1 on the year. They have a 45-3 victory over Tarleton State, and they have a 23-12 loss to Utah. Now, they didn't give up any points to Utah. I think the second half of the game, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't get to watch it, but based on what I was doing in my research, or at least after Cam Rising went out. But they only put up 12 in the game, so they struggled to score. They did score against Tarleton, but it's Tarleton, so it's hard to give them a whole lot of credit. So I still think they're going to struggle this year. I do like what they did at the coordinator positions. So I'm going to put them still as a bottom shelf team in the conference. I still don't think they're there yet. Colorado, they're 1-1. Squeaked out a win over North Dakota State in week 1. Got blown out 28-10 against Nebraska in week 2. Their offensive line is still bad. Shedeur Sanders is throwing them under the bus in press conferences. They're overhyped. They're not going. I don't think they're going to make a bowl game. They'll be lucky to win 4 or 5 games this year, in my opinion. They're a bottom shelf team. As a matter of fact, well, Nebraska, I think Nebraska is going to be pretty good. So I don't want to quite put them in the well just yet. So I'm going to leave them at bottom shelf. All right, Houston. Interesting team here. They lose 27-7 in week 1 to UNLV. But UNLV is pretty darn good on offense. So even though they're a G5 school, but Houston's struggling to score points. But they didn't go out in week 2, and they only lose 16-12 to Oklahoma. So a team who a lot of people are picking to be a dark horse to win the SEC. So what do you do with Houston? I had them as, I think, a well going in. Right, and see, let me find my notes here. Okay, they're 0-2, 27-7 drubbing by UNLV, but only lost by 4 to Oklahoma. They did hold Oklahoma to 252 total yards of offense. So the Houston defense, I don't think, is going to be that bad, to be honest with you. But because UNLV's offense is explosive, I think they put up 70 points on a team, if I'm not mistaken, on one of their opponents this year. But Houston's not going to be able to score the football. So I still have them as a well team in this conference. I still don't think they get out of the well just yet. They need to do more. I'm starting to think Oklahoma might just not be very good. So Houston, you have plenty of more chances to prove me wrong, but right now I have you in the well with Texas Tech because you're 0-2. and you haven't shown me anything just yet. All right. Next one is Brigham Young, the BYU Cougars. They are 2-0 on the year with wins over SMU 18-15 and a 41-13 win over Southern Illinois. I don't know that SMU win, even though it was good for the league and it was to shut up those loudmouth SMU fans on social media. Their offense was not good. Their offense struggled. Their defense looks like it's going to be okay because SMU's offense supposedly is really good, according to the pundits anyway. But BYU may struggle on offense this year. Jake Retzlaff hasn't looked very good. A lot of fans are calling for a new offensive coordinator. Even Kalani Sitake, I think, made some post-game comments. He wasn't happy with the offense. So right now, I'm putting BYU as bottom shelf. I can't put them in the well because they're 2-0. You know what? That's not fair. They're 2-0 and they beat a Power 5 team, so I'm putting them as a pretender. So I've got to at least put them as a pretender because they are 2-0 and they did beat SMU. They did win the game, and they deserve some credit for that. So I'm putting them as a pretender. So they actually bumped them up from the well to a pretender because they did win SMU. But if they don't get that offense fixed, they may get dropped back down to a bottom shelf or even a well team. Last but not least, one of the surprise teams on this list, and the team who I think I picked to finish last in this conference, or at least next to last, the Arizona State Sun Devils. They go out. Not only are they 2-0 on the year, they go out in week 2 and beat an SEC team 30-23, and Cam Scatterbo. Cam Scatterbo has said, you know what? Everybody's talking about Devin Neal. Everybody's talking about Ollie Gordon. Everybody's, there's been some conversation about the backs at West Virginia. A lot of conversation about DJ Giddens at Kansas State, RJ Harvey at UCF, and all those backs are great. But Cam Scatterbo is thinking, I think he went out and said, you know what? Nobody's talking about me. I'm a great back too. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go out here and rush for 262 yards against an SEC defense. And that's exactly what he did in that win. And in week 1, even though he didn't play great, what did Arizona State do in week? Let me back up. He didn't rush the ball for as many yards. What did Arizona State's offense do? They passed the football in week 1 in a 48-7 win over Wyoming, who in the past has been a really good program. Now, Wyoming's 0-2 on the year. Not sure how good they're going to be. But nonetheless, they're a formidable opponent. And Arizona State put up 48 points against them. So Arizona State's 2-0 right now. So are they in the conference? Should I put them in the conversation to win the conference? All the way from being a well team? Not so fast. They're definitely not in the well because they're 2-0 and they look a lot better than people expected. They really haven't played anybody. I don't think Mississippi State's a very good team. I'm still putting them as a pretender. Arizona State fans, don't get mad at me. I still think they have a chance to be special. But I need to see them do it against better competition. I'm not sure how good Mississippi State is. The other team they played was a G5 school who doesn't appear to be that good. Do it against better competition. Let me see, who do they play this week? Arizona State this week has Texas State, a team who a lot of people have picked to get the playoff spot for the group of 5. A very tough opponent. Can Arizona State continue to put up the kind of offensive performance against Texas State that they did the first 2 weeks? And can they go out and beat Texas State by, I'd like to see them do it by a fairly wide margin. So if they can do that, and if they can continue to put up points and win games against teams that nobody expected them to beat, their first Big 12 game is going to be in week 4 at Texas Tech. And right now that looks like Arizona State should win that game. The way Texas Tech is playing, they could start the season out 4-0. And if they do that, they will more than likely move up my tier list. They've already moved up 2 spots from well to pretender. Can they move up to a team who's in the conversation? Well, even further than that by the time this season's over. So right now, after week 2 of the college football season, I have Utah as the top shelf team in the conference. I have TCU, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Kansas as contenders. Who I all had them as contenders before the season. Iowa State, I dropped them from a contender to in the conversation, not because they're winning games, but they're not putting up points and they're struggling to run the football. So I'm putting them as in the conversation with West Virginia, Arizona, and UCF. Pretenders. BYU, I moved them up from a well team to a pretender because of their 2-0 record and their win over SMU. I moved Arizona State up from a well team to a pretender because of their shocking performances in their 2 games and also a win over a Power 5 team. Bottom shelf, I have Cincinnati, Baylor, and Colorado. Well, I have Texas Tech. Yes, Texas Tech is 1-1, but they look terrible and barely squeaked out a win over Abilene Christian, who's an FCS team. And then they got pretty much embarrassed by Washington State, so I have them as a well team. And even though Houston only lost by 4 points to Oklahoma, they're 0-2. They got drubbed by UNLV, and they're struggling to put points on the board against anybody. So I have them as a well team. So what do you all think about this list? Let me know. Let me get over here to the chat room. Didn't mean to abandon you guys, but I had to, can't look at both screens at once. Earl Carr, channel member in the house, says, look for BYU to find a new OC after the season. That would not surprise me one bit, Earl Carr, because Kalani Sitake did not seem happy post-game based on his comments. Looks like I have a super chat. Let me check it out. Appalachia Africa Twin in the house. Thanks for the breakdown, Couz. Little support for your work and time. Smash the crap out of the like button. Everybody, please do that. Hit that thumbs up button, especially if you think I earned it, okay? If you like this content, if you like my tier rankings, even if you disagreed with it, but you like my thought behind it, you appreciate the time and effort I put into it, hit that thumbs up button. It helps that algorithm. And by the way, Appalachia Africa Twin, I did go get me a bottle of Four Roses bourbon, single barrel. Actually just tried it for the first time today. Not bad. I still think I like Angel's Envy a little better, but the Four Roses is not bad. So anyway, I appreciate the recommendation and the donation you gave me to go check it out. All right. Ocho says swap WVU in Kansas. Man, I took the tier maker list down earlier than I needed to. Let me see if I can pull it back up here. Bear with me just a second. Window, full entire screen, share. All right. Bear with me a second, guys, while I pull this thing back up. I didn't mean to close it out so soon. Downloads. There we go. You guys should be able to see that, right? All right. So you said swap WVU in Kansas. You're putting Kansas in the contender list or in the conversation. Illinois is a Big Ten team, and Jalen Daniels not turned the ball over 3 times. They probably win that game. So I'm still not ready to quite throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, with Kansas. But that is a fair take, Ocho. Zachary says to move ISU up. That was a big win versus Iowa. Yeah, maybe I'm too hard on them, and that's fair. But, man, their offense has not looked good in 2 games. Now, Iowa is a very good defense. You know what? Screw it. That's one of the best wins the Big 12 have had all year. I'm moving them up. Oops, I didn't mean to move them both. Yeah, I'll move them up next time. It won't let me move them up. I've already closed out the tier list. But, yeah, that's fair. I probably have them too low. But so far, their offense isn't impressing me. They're having trouble running the football. I'm not sure if their offensive line is going to be able to be as good as they need to be. But that's fair, Zach. Matt Dick says, as a WVU fan, we enjoy this content, but as WVU fans, we only care about Pitt. This is just for fun. We got to worry about Pitt only. I get it, man. But I'm also a Big 12 channel, so I don't feel like it's fair to just cover WVU all the time and kind of forget about my other Big 12 followers. I'm sure you understand that. Jeremy Callahan says TCU won't do jack this year, and they may not, but right now they're 2-0. They're putting points on the board. I think their offense is going to be really good. Verdict's still out on their defense, and they do have a Power 4 win over Stanford on the road. I think that counts for something. So as of right now, I have them as a contender. Uh, yeah, I know, Jeremy. You're right. I put Iowa State too low. Um, I need to put them higher. Matter of fact, I'll go ahead and change it if I can. You guys talked me into it. You and Zach talked me into it. See how gullible I am. I'm easy to talk into things, aren't I? Let me see if I can make this change on the fly here. Nope, it won't let me. No biggie. Anyway, I get your point, and I agree with it, and I will move them up next time. Jeremy says problem with Kansas offense this year is that it is like Texas red chili, no beans. Great point. Jason Bean played well last year, man. Played his way into the NFL. Clint says he'd put Wazoo next to BYU. Oklahoma State and ISU deserve to be with Utah, in my opinion, and K-State right now. I don't know. I just think right now Utah. I wasn't really impressed. I mean, Oklahoma State, it was a big win, but man, they look. It was not a. It was kind of an ugly game. They had a lot of penalties. Couldn't run the football. So, I don't know. And the verdict's kind of still out on Arkansas. How good is Arkansas? I think they're going to be good, especially offensively. But again, it was kind of an ugly game. Smash bombing ASU above BYU for sure. Let me see what else we got on. Roy Wall says, unless BYU can find a QB, they won't win 6 games. Matt thinks our coach is going to be fired. I think SMU's overrated, though, Cam, to be honest. I don't think they're that good. I never understood all the hype around them. It's hard to come in to a P4 year one and be good. And I think UCF, Cincinnati, and BYU and Houston proved that last year. Houston could be with CU and Baylor, but they are 0-2 and no good with Texas Tech. Someone has to be last, and it's Houston. Yep, agreed. Agreed, John. They did almost beat Oklahoma, but again, how good is Oklahoma? I'm not sure they're any good this year. And if they're not, their fans are going to want Brent Venables run out of town, I would imagine. Back to 12 podcasts. He says you might have Texas Tech too high. I can't get them any lower, brother. Thank you for chiming in, though. I appreciate you hopping in the show. Me and you, we will get together and do a collaboration at some point this year. He says, appreciate all you do for the Big 12 and WVU. Enjoy the content and hope you're doing well. I am. Hope you are too. All right. Stormy Cyclone in the house says it is his show. He can put teams where he wants, even if they were pulled out of a hat. Thank you for that. Who was, let's see, I guess somebody had a problem with, TH3. Yep. Got it. I don't know, Tyler. Again, Iowa State's they've not eclipsed 90 yards rushing in any game, including against an FCS school. So, and yes, they did beat Iowa, and that is a great win. And I'll probably move them up because of that. But again, I did it on the fly. So, and again, it's just an opinion. It doesn't, at the end of the day, my opinion means jack squat other than for fun, right? He says I'm tripping. John Kelly says we had our worst game possible and only got beat by 21 against a playoff team. KU, I think I explained it, Grant. TCU's 2-0, and their offense looks really good. And again, I guess you've heard me say it. I did have ISU ranked probably one spot too low. I'm basing this not only on record, but how the teams have looked in their games. And, again, they haven't eclipsed 90 yards rushing in any game yet. So I think that matters. They're struggling to score. They only put up 21 points against North Dakota. Edward says USCF will have TCU lowered by 10:30 p.m. next Saturday. Matt says there should be 3 tiers: pretender, bowl team, and championship contender. A lot of great comments in here, guys. I appreciate it. Appreciate the comments. We have another super chat, I believe, from Earl Carr. Earl, thank you, my man. He says, look for the new OC to be Kellen Moore. He recently bought a house in Utah if BYU does hire a new OC. Kellen Moore, he's the one who used to be quarterback at Boise State. Am I correct? And he's now, or I don't know where he's at now, but I know he spent some time on the Dallas Cowboys staff, I believe. That would be a good hire, in my opinion, if they do. But here's the thing. Will they just go ahead and clean house and fire Kalani Sitake too? Or will they give him a chance to right the ship and bring in new assistants? It'll be interesting to see how they handle it, assuming BYU's not able to fix their issues. But I appreciate the donation. I appreciate you helping me out here on the channel, and appreciate you being a channel member here for 1 month. John Dry says he thinks all in all, the Big 12 is looking like they're as good as the Big 10 and the SEC. I'm not going to go that far just yet. I mean, we saw what Penn State did to West Virginia. We saw Illinois beat Kansas. So I'm not ready to go there just yet. But I think they're showing they can compete. They're definitely showing they can compete with the teams who maybe not, they can't compete with the teams at the top of the SEC and the Big 10, but they can compete with anybody else. That's where I would go with it. Grant says, I understand that, but I was at the game and they weren't trying to score. Let's see. Iowa State didn't have much offensive yardage in game 1 because they played bend, don't break, and North Dakota played long and ate up clock on offense. Yeah, I heard they're expecting, Matt, I heard they're expecting Rising to be back. Now, again, I'm not a Utah guy, so somebody that follows Utah can answer that better than me. Jeremy Callahan says he thinks the Iowa State-West Virginia game will be pivotal this year. I agree. It's going to be a very important game. Thankfully, I think it is in Morgantown this year, I believe. I've got the schedule right here in front of me. I'm pretty sure that's one of the ones in Morgantown. Oh, matter of fact, I know it is. October 12th, I believe. Oklahoma has injuries at wide receiver, plus lost their OC. Great point. But it's Oklahoma. You know what I mean? They should be just reloading. Especially the way their fans like to talk junk. Oklahoma State looked awful and somehow won. There are major concerns in Stillwater. I agree, Jeremy. I agree. That's why I probably should have Iowa State higher. Iowa State's defense looks legit, looks really good. They're going to be tough to score on, no matter who they play. So I probably should have had Iowa State at least equal to Oklahoma State, because that was their win was probably a better win than Oklahoma State's was, actually. So again, I was doing it on the fly. John Dry says the Big 12's basement is higher than the Big 10, ACC, and SEC. I agree with that, John. I think I agree. It's at least equal to it. Not sure it's higher, but it's at least equal to it. Yep, Houston showed some signs of life. Look, they have a really good football coach. Willie Fritz is a heck of a coach. He will turn that program around, and he might even have them winning games by the end of the year. But right now, they're just struggling to score. Their offense doesn't look great. But let's be honest, their defense, they played, UNLV's offense is explosive. They have one of the hottest and best offensive coordinators in the country. His name is escaping me right now, but he's going to be a head coach very soon. And then you've got, obviously Oklahoma's Oklahoma. They have 5-star guys all over the field. So they held them, their defense held Oklahoma to 16 points. So that's pretty impressive. And they only held, and UNLV, like I said, they're explosive, and they only put up 27 on them. So I think that matters. Matt Dick says the SEC basement is 2-0 Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt may not be the basement this year. Actually, Mississippi State might be that this year. Maybe even Arkansas, maybe Kentucky. Who knows? We'll see. John Kelly says, with the big financial advantage the other conferences are getting, still shows other teams can play, including 5 teams like us. Or, like USF. Sorry, John. Yeah, but USF played with Alabama for 3 quarters, and then Alabama, fourth quarter, it was a whole different ball game. The depth of Alabama just was too much for USF to overcome. Matt Dick says that is Bridge Day, October 12th, I'm assuming. I'm glad that's not one of the games I'm attending then, because because it's Bridge Day, it would add an hour to my route to get to Morgantown. But that is not one of the games I have tickets to. I have tickets to Penn State, I have tickets to Baylor, and I have tickets to Kansas State. And that will probably be the only 3 I attend this year, just due to my schedule and being very busy. Grant, are you an Iowa State fan? I'm assuming you are, because you seem to be really upset about where I put your team. But again, it was probably an error on my part. I should probably have them. So outside, really, if I move Iowa State where I had them before, there really wasn't a lot of changes on my list, to be honest, other than moving Texas Tech down to the well, moving Arizona State up, moving BYU up, and moving Cincinnati up one level is all. Because they are 1-1, and I do think Cincinnati has a chance to win some games this year that they're not supposed to. And they should have won that game against Pitt yesterday. They were the better team for 3 quarters of that game. Tyler Cobb says, Couz, after watching some of the teams we play struggle yesterday, what's your record prediction? I still think it's 8-4, Tyler, because West Virginia has had their struggles too. There's really not any team in the Big 12 right now. You could argue that Utah hasn't struggled that much, but there really isn't that outside of them. What team hasn't struggled? I mean, Kansas State had to hold on to beat a Group of 5 team. Kansas lost to Illinois. Oklahoma State looked ugly in their win over Arkansas. Took 3 turnovers for them to win. 3 Arkansas turnovers. I mean, what team hasn't struggled? Arizona hasn't looked great at times. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're right. I still think 8-4 is doable, and I still think that's reasonable. And I still haven't. Right now, I'm not changing, because I expected us to lose to Penn State, and I expected us to beat Albany. So right now, we're exactly where I thought we'd be. I still think we beat Pitt. I think we beat Kansas. I think I have us losing to Oklahoma State, and then Iowa State and Arizona, and then I think we win the rest of them. Daniel thinks BYU will turn it around. Jeremy says Kansas State's offense or secondary played bad. Matt says Iowa State will earn it. Look, I had Iowa State as one of my teams to potentially play in the conference title game. So I'm not giving up on them. I was just basing it on what their offense has done so far. But it is fair, the points that were being made earlier about them are all fair. I think they dropped 0 after Rising went out, Nightmarish Jay, if I'm not mistaken. So your comment is very, very fair that Utah goes as Rising goes. That's a very fair statement. Daniel says Arizona didn't look good. They didn't. Like I said, I think I mentioned they've had, 19 penalties in 2 games. They have a lot of things to clean up. They have a new coaching staff. Their defense has looked not great at times, despite having some guys returning on that side of the ball. It's basically going to, if with Tedero, McMillan, and Noah Fafita, they're going to be able to score a lot of points on teams just because of those 2 guys alone. But if you get against a defense who's able to shut that down and force them to run the football, they may struggle. And so because of that, I don't look. I think Arizona is going to still be a good football team, but I don't think they're going to compete for a conference championship. I think I had them finishing at 8-4. Right now, I'm standing by that. I would even adjust it to 7-5, but like I said, I haven't went through their schedule game by game again. But I don't think they're going to win a conference championship. Jeremy Callahan says the greatest thing about the Big 12 is that even after week 2, nobody has a clue who is winning the title. Exactly. Matt says Arizona looks like Texas Tech. I'm not going to go that far. Texas Tech gave up 51 points against a FCS team. Arizona hasn't done that yet. See, Tyler says he thinks West Virginia still goes 9-3. He doesn't see us losing to Kansas or Kansas State at home after watching them. Iowa State will be a tough, and the 2 road games in October will be tough. Very fair, Tyler. Very fair, and that's, like I said, I'm at 8-4. 9-3 is doable, but man, they've got to clean up that pass defense. The pass defense has got to be fixed. If West Virginia doesn't fix their pass defense, Arizona might put up 500 yards through the air on them. I mean, I'm obviously exaggerating, but my goodness. Jeremy Callahan says Texas is friggin' bad. Brandon Bailey, who's a VIP member, he says, I'm still going to say 9-3, but I'm real concerned about defense. Do you think we will have to score 40+ to win the games? Some of them probably, Brandon, we will, but I just don't – I'm not ready to go that far just yet, because I think these first 2 weeks have shown the coaching staff what they need to do differently potentially. And I'm still not convinced that Garnett Hollis is a bad football player. He just, for whatever reason, he struggled against Albany, and I'm not sure why. He struggled worse against Albany than he did against Penn State. And again, I'm not sure why. Do have to give some credit to Albany's quarterback and receiver, who are both Power 4 guys who have played at the Power 4 level before, so they are talented. Matter of fact, Seven McGee, the wide receiver, was a 5-star recruit who went to Oregon, and Oregon doesn't recruit bad players. But that being said, I just think maybe he just had a bad night. I'm not sure. It might be something else I've thought about too. Is he's under a different scheme. He's under a different defensive backs coach, running a different defense. They've talked about how Shadon teaches playing the ball. He teaches it differently than what he's accustomed to. He even talked about that on my show when we interviewed him. So maybe he still hasn't quite got his feet underneath him yet as far as learning how to play that way. He's been playing a certain way for so long, it's hard to change it overnight. Right now, I have Utah, Jonathan, as my number 1 team in the Big 12. And I have Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Kansas, and Iowa State as teams who could be contenders. I had Iowa State as in the conversation, but I pretty much got chewed out by my comment section and changed my mind. But in all honesty, they beat a top 20 team on the road in a rivalry game, so I think that does deserve them to probably move up more. So I think that was an error on my part. Let's see. These make no sense. ISU goes on the road and beats. I got you, Big Baller Productions. I just corrected that. I just corrected it, my brother. Matter of fact, let me just go ahead and see if I can do that right now, so I can calm everybody down. You guys keep chatting in the comments. Well, that didn't work. Let me try it again. Here we go. All right. Let me just go ahead and share my screen with y'all, and we will I'll do this again. All right. I'm moving Iowa State up because you all had some fair points. They had the best win of the day. They probably have the best win so far of any Big 12 team. So they deserve to be in the contender conversation for sure. So my new list, I have Utah top shelf. I have contenders of TCU, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Kansas, and Iowa State. In the conversation, West Virginia, Arizona, and UCF. Pretenders, BYU and Arizona State. Bottom shelf, Cincinnati, Baylor, and Colorado. And then the well, I have Texas Tech and Houston. So hopefully that list will make you guys happier. Again, I did that on the fly. So when you do things on the fly, sometimes you may miss something. Appalachia Africa Twin, thank you for the $10 donation. He says, so if I buy the WVU Bowl tickets and the bourbon, your wife is driving this year, right, Couz? Maybe, man. I don't know. Depends on where we're going, I guess. If we end up playing in Charlotte again, maybe. Can't be driving to Arizona. Thank you for the support. I appreciate it. TCU and Kansas down? Nah, I'm not ready to do that yet. Not ready to do that yet. Kansas's loss was because of 3 turnovers by Jalen Daniels. I don't think he's going to do that every game. And they were playing a Big Ten team. Illinois is not a slouch. They're well coached. And Kansas actually outgained Illinois in the game. They had more yards than Illinois did. Again, it was 3 turnovers. So, same reason I'm not moving Oklahoma State up to the top shelf tier, even though they beat Arkansas, because they did it ugly. They turned the ball. Arkansas turned it over 3 times. So, I'm still not super impressed with Oklahoma State yet. I still think they can compete for the conference championship, which is why I have them in that tier, but I'm not ready to put them as top shelf just yet. Pokemon Kid Entertainment, that's a very unbiased take, man. He says, I'm a Mountaineer fan, but I believe WVU goes down more spots. They have defensive problems. That's fair, and I almost did. But the problem is, again, Penn State was a top 8 team. Albany's the worst team we'll play because they're FCS. So until we start playing teams that are more at our level, talent-wise, I'm not sure we know what this team is. So if I do this again after week 3, I may have a minute. If they lose the Pitt, I'm definitely dropping them down for sure. So we'll see where we are after week. I may do this every week. I may not. I didn't do it after week 1, but this week 2, there were a lot of Big 12 games that were against other Power 5 teams or Power 4 teams. So I thought that's why this week would be a good one to do it. But I think it's just a fun exercise. It gives us a chance to debate, gives you guys a chance to talk crap to me for my stupid decisions, for my stupid rankings, which is all part of the fun, right? Oh yeah, and a great point, Daniel. And it just so happened, and I'm not saying it was his play calling, but for those of you who may not know, West Virginia's defensive coordinator, I didn't find this out until after the game, but West Virginia's defensive coordinator, Jordan Leslie, got ran into on the sidelines, fell, busted his head, gashed his head open above his eyelid, had to get stitches. So he had to leave in the second half and go to the locker room and get stitches. It just so happened while he was gone is when Albany scored their 2 touchdowns. So the guys could have been, I'm sure the guys, they thought they were, Sean Martin said in post-game press conference, they thought they were going to have to take him to the emergency room. So it apparently was a pretty severe injury. And, maybe the team was a little bit worried about their coach, and it could have gotten them off their game a little bit mentally, and they could have had some lapses. I'm not making excuses for them, but we have to take the human element into consideration here. These guys are humans. They're with these coaches every single day. And they just saw one of their coaches go down and he was pouring blood out of his head and had to go, you know what I'm saying? It could definitely have affected the game. And yes, even though Shadon Brown didn't call different plays, how do we know he may not have got them in? He may have relayed them in at different times, or they could have been out of sync a little bit. Who knows? Now, the coaching staff's never going to admit that if it was true. But I don't think it's coincidence that the defense having their worst 2 drives of the game coincided with that. I don't think that's coincidence, which is another thing that made me think, well, maybe it was an anomaly, I don't know. I'm still not ready to give up on this team yet, even though I was very frustrated during the game. Once it was over with and I had time to sit back and think about it, this can still be a good football team. So basically my opinion hasn't changed yet. I'm still kind of hanging out there in I don't know world so far. Yeah, shout out to Benny Bishop and Zach Frazier. Absolutely. Thank you, Bees, for stopping in. I see some new names in the chat. But yeah, Daniel, thank you for reminding me about that. I meant to mention that earlier. Jeremy says those top tier FCS teams aren't inferior opponents. They're a different animal, but can be more difficult to beat than basement FCS schools because they execute almost flawlessly. And that's fair. And that's like I said, the guys that were making plays against West Virginia in that game were both former P4 players. So it's not like they were complete and utter slouches. You know what I'm saying? But still, West Virginia didn't cover it well, regardless of who it was. ISU should be there. I believe there is in the WVU troubles. Nightmares Jace says if UCF goes into Fort Worth and has another 300 plus rushing yards against TCU and comes out with a W, I expect a bump. Yeah, and it may happen, man. I'm just right now. I want to see what UCF can do on the defensive end, and I want to see what KJ Jefferson can do at quarterback because so far he hasn't impressed me. He's not lived up to expectation, but again, it's only been 2 games, so we got to see what he does going forward. Yeah, it depends. Right now, I was actually trying to find the spread on BetUS earlier, who's a sponsor of me here on the channel. Got to give them a quick shout out, but I wasn't able to find it for some reason. The spreads were not up on the site when I pulled them up. I was actually going to pull them up for this chat. And obviously I'm not going to pull up somebody else. So I think so. It probably depends on what betting site you're on as to what the spread is. To be honest, I know it was 5.5 on ESPN when it first came out. But I've seen some other numbers as well. Let me see what if it's up now. I'm liking these Friday games, by the way. There's Friday night we have 2 games. We have UNLV in Kansas, and we have Arizona and Kansas State. So there are 2 games Friday night with Big 12 teams in it. I love it. And by the way, that Arizona Kansas State game is not considered a conference game because it was already on just like the Utah Baylor game wasn't this week. All right, I'm going to solve a problem for you all here. Or an argument. The spread on BetUS is 2.5. West Virginia right now is favored by 2.5 over Pitt at Pitt. And the over-under is 59.5 points. So take that for what it's worth. That's at betus.com. So, all right. Let's see. Matt says he's taking the over. Matt says he's glad he got 5.5. Yep, BetUS has it at 2.5, Daniel. You're absolutely right. For some reason, when I tried to pull that up earlier, it was not coming up. And for you guys who were putting names of these other people in the chat, I can't say it because those people are not paying me money. They're not my sponsor. So we got to stick with BetUS here, guys, if y'all don't mind. Or I do anyway. So 2.5 at betus.com. And it looks like a lot of the other sites have it that way as well. But so it looks like it's dropped. Except for one particular site, apparently. Still has it at 5.5. So that's interesting. I bet that's the same one ESPN uses. Okay, so Brandon says it's now dropped over there. Interesting. People were putting money on Pitt. Matt says WVU is the game of the weekend. Yeah, for us it is for sure. I'm not sure the rest of the Big 12 is going to feel that way, but Paul Gee says the Big 12 had a pretty good weekend. ASU over SEC, Oklahoma State over SEC, BYU beat a good ACC team. Iowa State goes into Big Ten country. Houston goes on the road and gives Oklahoma a great game. What do you mean nobody else plays, Matt? Pretty much the whole Big 12 plays. Because it's the SEC, Tyler. You know how it is, man. But yeah, you're right. They could have definitely picked a better game to go to than LSU, South Carolina, for sure. Paul, I actually was able. I still watch my Bills play. Paul, Bills were able to pull out a win today. Didn't think they were going to. Man, they were down 17-3 at one time, but were able to pull out a win, 34-28 today over the Arizona Cardinals. Defense stepped up in the second half, made some good big stops, and of course, Josh Allen did his thing. All right. Well, listen, guys, I'm gonna jump off of here. Pokemon Kid Entertainment. Yeah, the Bengals should have won that game today, man. Hopefully they don't disappoint you all this year. Same thing with me. I hope my Bills don't disappoint either, but I'm kind of expecting them to because that's just what I'm accustomed to. But anyway, okay, Matt. Now I understand what you're saying. It's Arizona week. We're the only one playing. I got it. All right. Appreciate you all hopping on. I've been on here over an hour. I'm going to jump off again. I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Butner. If you need a medical malpractice or personal injury attorney, look no further than Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner. If you're in the state of West Virginia or Virginia, give them a call at 1-800-999-HURT or go to yourlawyeryourvoice.com. Check them out today. They will take care of you because they have a passion for people in need, and they will take care of you. So check them out today if you're in West Virginia or Virginia. All right. Thanks to everybody for hopping on. It's been a fun show. I really enjoyed it. Sorry for pissing off all you Iowa State fans out there. I fixed it, so it's all good. I now have you guys in the contender category. So that being said, thanks again. I appreciate the support. Appreciate you guys hopping on the show. Have a top shelf rest of your day. Have a top shelf week coming up. It's Backyard Brawl Week, West Virginia fans. I hope you're ready. It's going to be a fun one. And everybody out there, you country roads.